Did you know that there have been 27 different Hall of Famers to record a sack in the Super Bowl? Of course, that is so far. There's always somebody else who could end up getting their name added to this list. But at least through the first 60 Super Bowls and this upcoming class of 2026, 27 different Hall of Famers are on this list to record a sack. Now, to get it started, we have to go all the way back to Super Bowl I. And in that game, we end up finding 5 who got it started. For the Green Bay Packers, there was Henry Jordan, Willie Davis, and Ray Nitschke. And then for the Kansas City Chiefs, you have Buck Buchanan and Bobby Bell. For the Minnesota Vikings in the 1970s and their famed Purple People Eaters defense, you get both Carl Eller and Alan Page being able to record a sack in the big game. Then for the Dallas Cowboys and what was essentially Doomsday Defense 1 and Doomsday Defense 2, you have Bob Lilly as well as Randy White, the Manster, one of the greatest nicknames of all time, I think. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, the only Hall of Famer that recorded a sack in the Super Bowl is Mean Joe Green. Jack Ham didn't get there, neither did Jack Lambert or Mel Blount. And poor L.C. Greenwood, he came up this time as a senior nominee from the senior committee, but didn't make it in this time. I really hope he gets a chance to come back around again and get another shot at the Hall of Fame, because I do believe that Greenwood belongs in Canton. Up next for the San Francisco 49ers with their first couple of Super Bowls, you have Fred Dean after they had picked him up from the Chargers, and he really helped change their defense. Next, we move on to that devastating Chicago Bears defense from 1985, and we find 3 future Hall of Famers that recorded a sack in that game. You get Steve McMichael, you get Richard Dent, and you get Dan Hampton. Just absolutely nasty, one of the greatest defenses of all time, the Bears in 1985. Then for the 49ers, for their next couple of Super Bowls, we get Charles Haley, but also for the Dallas Cowboys in the 90s, Charles Haley as well. Remember, he is the only player in Super Bowl history to record a sack in 4 different title games. That's right, the Hall of Famer Charles Haley got it in 4. He had a chance in 5, and the only Super Bowl he did not record a sack in was the first one that he played in, Super Bowl 23 with the Niners. But he got it in 24, and then all 3 of the Super Bowls that he played with the Cowboys there in the early to mid-90s. Up next, we find Bruce Smith with the Buffalo Bills. He was able to come through with some sacks, and one that was, it ended up being a safety, remember, Super Bowl 25, but it was oh so close to possibly a touchdown when somehow Jeff Hostetler just held onto that ball when Bruce Smith's hand was right there on his wrist. What a grip from Hostetler to be able to hang on to that ball. Up next, we have the Chargers and Junior Seau. Unfortunately, in that kind of blistering loss to the 49ers, but San Francisco that year was just, they were unmatched. Next, we find the Green Bay Packers with Reggie White and Leroy Butler. Of course, Reggie White setting the official Super Bowl record with 3 sacks in that game. Up next, we get Steve Atwater from the Denver Broncos. So we get a couple of safeties there in Butler and Atwater. Do any more DBs add their names? Hang on, that's coming up soon. So up next, we get now into the 2000s. And with the New York Giants, we find Michael Strahan, one of the greatest pass rushers of all time. And then with the Patriots, you get Richard Seymour. So tunneling his way up the middle, able to get in there for a Super Bowl sack. Speaking of coming from the middle and being devastating at the same time, you get Tampa Bay Buccaneers Warren Sapp. He came through with a Super Bowl sack for the Bucs win in the early 2000s. Then how about this for a bit of a gap there? Because remember, Haley had his Super Bowl sacks in 89, but then also got them into the early 90s as well. But this is a bigger difference. Dwight Freeney, first recording a sack for the Indianapolis Colts in Super Bowl 44, then getting another one for the Atlanta Falcons 7 years later in Super Bowl 51. I mean, how about that? That is a huge gap there, but Dwight Freeney, the Hall of Famer, coming through in both of those. Now, remember when I asked, would there be another defensive back on this list? How about this one? Darrelle Revis. Revis Island, that is right. Coming off the corner, recorded a sack for the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 49, Darrelle Revis. So we get 3 defensive backs on there. Up next, we find DeMarcus Ware from Super Bowl 50 with the Denver Broncos, and also from that same game, the newest member to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Luke Kuechly, who will be going in this new class in 2026. Now, of course, remember, we've got so many more who could potentially come on here. We've got names from the past, like I mentioned L.C. Greenwood before. Will Harvey Martin possibly hear his name called one day? And then, of course, the more recent players. Well, you've got Aaron Donald, who retired a little over a year ago now. So we've got just a few more years to wait before we know his name's going to get called. He's going to get that nice big old knock from a. Well, it'd be interesting to see who they get to knock on his door to let him know he's in the Hall of Fame. Of course, you got Von Miller, but he has to retire first. he keeps coming back and playing another year and still thriving, even well into his 30s. So, who else do you think might be able to come through and add their name and join in Canton? There's plenty to possibly choose from. Never know.